Cottney Attorneys and Consultants is dedicated to helping the construction industry with legal, business, and safety challenges. Welcome to this week's episode of Law and Mortar with John Kenny and Trent Cottney.
Hey, this is Trent Cottney, CEO of Cottney Attorneys and Consultants, and I'd like to welcome everybody to another episode of Law and Mortar. As always, I've got John Kenny with me. John, how are you doing?
Doing great. Glad to be back. Glad to see everybody through virtual world out there. Hope all's doing well after the holiday.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the first time we've both been doing this, I think, for a while, if I'm not mistaken. I was on the road, and then we had the Thanksgiving break. So looking forward to getting back in the saddle.
We told everybody you were on special assignment for the industry.
There you go, special assignment. So the biggest news I think that most contractors have been talking about lately are all the different, either vaccine mandates or OSHA COVID-19 type regulations, the emergency temporary standard. And this last week, as well as this week, there's been a significant amount of legal activity. So just to kind of touch on some of the high points, there have been various cases and, federal district court cases in Missouri and Kentucky and Louisiana, where they issued preliminary injunctions against the healthcare vaccine mandate, against the federal contractor vaccine mandate, against the CMS, which is the Medicare and Medicaid Centers vaccine mandate. So again, those are isolated for the jurisdictions that they're in, but that sort of shows that the government may be overstepping its bounds a little bit. I mean, keep in mind, this is just a preliminary injunction, which means it's just a temporary stay. There still has to be arguments about it, but they got past an initial threshold. What's interesting is the OSHA Emergency Temporary Standard final reply brief is due December 6th. So come December 7th, shortly thereafter, we're going to get a response from the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals, and then eventually it's going to go to the Supreme Court, and we're going to get a decision. I think I've kind of said it before, either on our industry update or otherwise. I really think that it's going to get struck down. I just don't see it surviving, judicial scrutiny, but we'll wait and see. So, John, what are you hearing on your end?
Yeah, I think for the most part, contractors have put the brakes on worrying about that particular end of it. I believe, with all the updates, even I know you've been putting out lately and on the news, I think it's at best, it's dead for quite a while. I don't know. I think the only thing I've had a couple questions on is now with the new strain that's coming out there, is this going to extend the pandemic far enough that they may try to rewrite whatever the court knocks down? But again, I wouldn't even attempt to answer that. Who knows where we'll be at as far as how long we'll be into this and whether it be necessary to try it even.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think one of the things that contractors can do, so, I agree with you, taking my lawyer hat off. I don't see any of these things, coming to fruition. The one that I think stands the most chance is the federal contractor vaccine mandate, but even that is a little overreaching. I could see where it could apply to crews, but to have it reach all the way down to a home office and things like that, it's a little bit more burdensome. But the one thing that you can do is you can start working on your documentation and your policies to protect you, because vaccine mandates are going to be here in some form or fashion. Your customers are going to require it. With Omicron out there and whatever variant is next after that, it's not going away. So my advice would be go ahead and work on some of your documentation. The other thing that you really want to do is just bone up on the OSHA inspection process. And John, I know, we've been working on a OSHA checklist that's on shopcottney.com. It's brand new. It's got a great, easy to understand checklist for contractors to kind of run through, sort of an SOP that you can use in the event that you've got an OSHA inspection. So check that out.
Yeah, that will also be available in Spanish probably by the end of next week too. We have it being translated right now.
Great. And look for some companion documents as well. I might offer something that's a little bit more high level from a legal standpoint to kind of go through some of the do's and don'ts that your employees, especially supervisory employees, could partake in. So other news that came out here recently, it was either today or yesterday, the budget approval. John, why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, last night the budget finally passed. I don't know, 68, 69 votes positive in the Senate. And I just heard this afternoon that the president had signed it. So The way I understand it, it extends the government operating out till, I believe, around the 18th of February. So at least that's on the back burner for now, but that means we're going to be dealing with it here just after the holidays, but it gives them a chance. So really what that means is if we continue to operate as normal in the government, they also have to do the debt ceiling adjustment, I believe, comes around the same time coming up as well. That's something completely different. But so as far as contractors or anybody goes, it's pretty much business as normal in the U.S. Government right now. They've got their extension in place.
Right. And yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. You know, I was talking to Craig Brydup, our lobbyist, well known in the industry. And he was saying that another Democrat has decided not to run for re-election. So the number of seats, you know, it's becoming more and more apparent that the odds are in the favor of Republicans taking over the House at this point. So I think you're going to see some major changes with this next election. And it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out with a lot of these mandates and a lot of the other OSHA type regulations that may be coming down the pipe. So stay tuned on that. Now, John, I know you and I have a busy week next week. We've got a lot going on. I know we both have webinars for the Kentucky Roofing Association, so looking forward to that. But you're doing something pretty cool with National Women in Roofing. Why don't you tell everybody about that?
Yeah, on Tuesday for their National Education Committee, we're doing the live webinar on plan specification and contracts. So we're kind of taking it from a different angle. It's not a legal one about what you need to include and not include. Looking at it from that operational aspect of, you know, how's the plans put together, how's the specs put together, what do you look for, you know, what do you need to properly put your bid together up to get to contractual, and then we do have some clauses in there that what you need to look for to keep yourself out of trouble and how it all ties in. So it's going to be a very packed 1 hour presentation. And we do have 2 or 3 handouts that can be downloaded from there because there's just too much to get out in 1 hour.
Yeah, and that's great. And, you know, our company as a whole, regardless of whether it's legal or consulting, we always support National Women in Roofing. I've had the pleasure of doing a couple of different presentations this year for various chapters. And we're looking forward to, National Women in Roofing Day at IRE coming up here in just a couple months. So
yeah,
that's going to be great. Where I know we've got Lee in our office who's going to be speaking, and I'm sure we'll have other attendees as well. So should be a great time. John, you know, I know we're getting close to the end of the year here, and you know, one of the things that I guess from a business perspective, I was really happy at seeing the numbers off of our Black Friday and our Cyber Monday Shop Cottony sales. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about that?
Yeah, we ran some specials because we got the online sales. We had a chance to take advantage of the Black Friday and Cyber Monday percentages off. We did very well. Our clientele out there definitely enjoyed taking advantage of that, which they should. That's what it was meant for. Got a lot of good downloads, training programs, documents. So what we're going to do is you keep an eye out over the next 2 to 3 weeks up till Christmas. We're actually going to have some very specialized package deals off. So I think it's going to be very, very exciting what you're going to see. So keep an eye out on our social media and our email blasts. We're going to start on Monday or Tuesday. We'll start to see the first one come out. Great.
Well, John, guess what time it is, my man?
Oh, it's our favorite time, I bet. That old question time.
Yep. And they're stacking up here, but I want to throw out something that's primarily legal, but I know you've had to deal with it, especially in your position with contractors in the past. So this question is from Brian, and Brian has a question about indemnification. He says that I know that this is a provision that I'm supposed to look at, but I'm not certain how I should change it or revise it so that it's favorable to me. How can I do that without totally striking the provision? So good question. What I always like to say, Brian, is the best thing that you can do is try to make it as limited as possible. There's 3 types of indemnification. There's limited indemnity, intermediate indemnity, and broad form. Okay, limited means that you're only going to hold somebody harmless. You're only going to identify them for your bad acts, right? If you screw something up, then you're going to identify them for that. Okay. Intermediate means that if you're responsible at all, even if it's 1%, then you might have to cover that. Different state laws may apply. Okay. And the third thing is broad form, which means it doesn't matter if you screw up or your customer screws up, you're covering it. Okay. Clearly you want limited, right? So what I really recommend is limit any of those provisions to only your negligence, right? Only your bad acts or omissions. If you do that, and watch out for terms that say whole or in part, that's basically an intermediate, right? So you want to take that in part and you want to strike through that with a red pen. That's the key thing, is focus on that. Also work with your insurance agent, make sure that you've got the proper CGL coverage to cover whatever indemnification requirements are in there. That's a critical component that a lot of contractors overlook. John, what, in your past, experience in operations, how did you approach indemnification? What did you see?
Yeah, well, I always found it pretty much an unwinnable battle to get it struck out completely. So from strategic standpoint, absolutely agree, limited is the best. So the way I used to approach that is if it was the broad way, you work from that aspect to get it to limited or in the middle of the road. But I always like to approach it like, hey, I'm willing, I understand you gotta give something to your legal team and we got to give something to our legal team. And I used to go at it by saying, look, completely understand that we are going to accept the liability strictly for what we are responsible for to get it to that limited. And, of course, we'd go have our attorney's clause of exactly the way we want to scratch down. And I will tell you, probably 80% of the cases did not fight back on that because they were so used to contractors fighting it completely that they usually would give in and do it. And also, too, I can tell you there's so many contractors that don't even pay attention to that clause, that they usually have enough on the hook on the job. That then I will tell you, we've won a lot. We've gotten out of a lot of issues by limiting it just to our work because it had nothing to do with us, what happened on the job. And we got notice. I'll tell you this, we got a notice on one job that we were responsible, tied into the, you're indemnified. And we said, nope. And when we sent it back, the actual person handling said, how did you ever get the contract, our project manager, to accept that clause? We don't normally do that, but it was, and it was legal and we were out of it.
That's great. And I hope all our listeners are paying attention to that because that's a key thing. Don't ever overlook indemnification. It's one of the worst provisions in any contract. You've definitely got to pay attention to that one. So, John, with that, we are at the end of another episode. I'd like to thank everybody for making us the #1 construction law podcast in the world. Stay tuned next week for another Law and Mortar. If you got any questions for me, you can reach me at Trent Cotney, tcotney@cotneycl.com. John, how can they get you?
That'd be jkenny@cotneycl.com.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, guys. We will see you next week.
Take care.